Okay, so the manga that betrayed us all, Usagi Drop. Let's check this out.
Usagi Drop is a series split into two parts: Order and Chaos, Yin and Yang, Good and Evil. It is a series that is forever burned into my brain. It is a series that makes me speak in a melodramatic tone to impart upon you how serious the situation truly is. It is a series that betrayed me. It is a series that betrayed us all. The first half of Usagi Drop is an absolutely lovely slice of life story about a 30-year-old man named Daikichi. When his grandpa dies, he leaves behind an illegitimate daughter named Rin. While the rest of the family views her coldly, as little more than a burden who's been thrust upon them, Daikichi steps up to the task and takes her in. From here, we follow Daikichi's journey to becoming a good father. Of course, this means that his relationship with Rin is at the core of the series, as we explore the knee-jerk decision to take her in that quickly consumes his life. He learns all about the aspects of parenting he's never even considered, and just how out of his depth he truly is. He realizes that there's a lot more to even simple things like finding a daycare than he'd initially expected, that he's going to need to make sacrifices at work with his social groups, and yet he still makes mistakes and needs to learn from them. These decisions also aren't glossed over. No, when Daikichi has to take on less responsibilities at work, he has to stand back and listen while others berate him, and has to deal with employees who don't understand a thing about how busy he's gotten. Overall, it's clear that, no matter what choice he makes, there will be sacrifices. He can't both maintain the status quo of his life and raise a child properly. As such, he even worries that this sacrifice could be too much, or that he'll be made into a sacrifice himself, as in he will cast aside other wants in his life and ultimately regret his choice to be a parent in some way. However, despite what first seems like a lonely existence cut off from his prior relationships, he finds new points of connection. He asks his colleagues for advice and he meets with other parents. Throughout it all, he fumbles and makes mistakes, but he always does his best to improve until eventually, he's just a good dad. It's by no means a unique arc, but it's extremely well handled. And to me, that's because of the level of detail and because of Rin herself. I already mentioned the daycare, but there are many moments like that pop up. Little excursions to buy clothes or school supplies, Daikichi finding that people treat him differently, both in minor and relatively major ways, and Daikichi dealing with a child who had their primary caregiver die. Her worries about that, her fear that one day Daikichi won't be there for her anymore, manifests itself as a quiet demeanor, and typical childhood problems like bedwetting and fear of the dark. However, throughout it all, the manga is willing to pause and focus on these problems not as simply general child issues, but rather an exploration of Rin's personality. As it becomes clear that she's this headstrong character with a strong will, underneath that still surface. And that level of detail I was talking about, it comes through in moments like when Rin is in the first grade and thinks she's too old for hugs now because her classmates are being first graders and decided they're all grown up. The way the manga explores all these little moments, it makes their relationship feel real and incredibly endearing. Actually, I want to focus more on that bedwetting thing I mentioned earlier, because it's a great example of how this manga takes typical childhood behavior but explores it in a really real way. See, at this point, Rin isn't wetting the bed in her sleep. She's just scared of the dark and can't bring herself to go alone. However, she also doesn't want to wake Daikichi. To me, wrapped up in all this, there's a little girl who already lost one father figure, and is afraid that she'll make a wrong move, that her new place in this world is flimsy, and that all it will take is being a bit too much of a burden, and her new guardian will reject her. And why wouldn't that be the case? She doesn't know this guy all that well. He doesn't know her. But then he carefully handles the situation. He tells her that he won't be mad with her for waking him up. It brings them closer together in this really gentle, carefully thought out way. Still though, my favorite part of this is how Daikichi solves the problem. See, I went on about this being some exploration of Rin's personality, and while it is, it's also a way of showing parents' blind spots, and how easy it is to overthink things. Because, after a brief conversation with another parent, Daikichi realizes the temperature of the room was causing it. All it took was adjusting that thermostat, and bam! No more bedwetting. Which could feel anticlimactic or unrelated, but it doesn't. It feels real. Plus, even if it was happenstance that caused this, it was also Daikichi's lack of knowledge, the fact that he needs to learn, and through this he and Rin become closer. Of course, all of this means that Daikichi is growing and developing, but it's not just his relationship with Rin that changes. Now, remember how I mentioned that his family doesn't want a thing to do with Rin at first? Well, that led me to believe that the likes of his mom would be pretty hateable as the story progresses. After all, she was a pretty big jerk to this little girl. But as Daikichi comes to a better understanding of the difficulties parents go through, there's a certain gentle way the manga tackles these subjects. Like Daikichi reminisces about his relationship with his own parents, about how his mother must have given up so much, her dreams, her job, whatever, in order to raise him well. So this woman, who at first I expected to be somewhat vilified due to her cold treatment of Rin, instead turns out to be a pretty good person. She even slowly warms up to her and helps Rin feel more comfortable with her family unit, and is super excited to spend more time with her granddaughter in the future. To me, the story has this understanding that yes, she could have been nicer to Rin from the get-go, but this also wasn't some small decision. Taking her in would have meant really committing, and if she wasn't ready for that, if she had already raised her other children and didn't have it in her anymore, maybe that doesn't make her a bad person. Maybe that just makes her a person. Overall though, I've mainly been talking about character stuff, and while that's definitely the focus of the manga's first half, there is also something of a plot developing with the mystery of who Rin's mother is. See, Daikichi makes it his quest to find her and asks her about Rin, about how she ended up with his grandpa and so on. At first he views this as being for Rin, but he eventually realizes something. Maybe this isn't what she really needs right now. Maybe he's doing this more to satisfy his own curiosity than anything else. After all, while he spends time looking for her, he sometimes neglects Rin.
Let me just check one thing real quick. My fucking stream, is it still... Okay, everything is fine.
Until he realizes that right now, she needs support from him in the day-to-day. That's what's most important at this time. Still, he does find something of a balance and eventually tracks down the mother. Now, this was a character I was ready to have the story vilify. I mean, Daikichi for one is not happy with her, which I can understand. This is basically his kid now, and it's easy to imagine why the idea of someone giving her up would initially upset him. But once again, the manga surprised me with its gentleness, because we learned that this woman didn't keep Rin because she had a dream she wanted to pursue, to be a manga artist, and she realized she wouldn't be able to properly take care of her daughter and do that at the same time. So she made a choice. Right away, there's a meta component to this that I really like. Since she's a manga artist and I'm reading a manga, the respect for this craft is clear. What some might view as simple entertainment is clearly being given priority as someone's genuine desire in life. On top
Yeah, because there's something to understand that, like, if you want to really become a manga artist, it takes everything of your life. Like, it's kind of like it takes so much time, especially in Japan. Like, it's a work, it's job, it's a passion that is just like just will steal your life away. And this is why, like, it's actually like, maybe it's not, it doesn't look as like, it doesn't look as such a reasonable explanation, right? But in Japan it actually is, because like some careers in Japan are actually so fucking like demanding that, yeah, you need to, that this is an actual reasonable choice, you know. It's not even, without even being mean or anything.
On top of that, we also see how she comes across as a bit childish and immature at times, as someone who still has plenty of her own growing up to do. A villain, she is not. A bad person, she is not. Once again, she's just a person. Regardless of Daikichi being upset with her, the manga frames her in an incredibly empathetic way. Because of that, because of the way the story continually frames its characters in an empathetic way, it's just so comfy and enjoyable. However, I still haven't even mentioned one of the highlights: Daikichi's slowly developing romance with Yukari, a single mother he grows closer with. Her child Koki and Rin quickly hit it off, becoming close friends. Despite Koki's rebellious nature, Rin is able to reel him in. Meanwhile, as Koki and Rin spend more time together, so do Yukari and Daikichi, and Yukari consistently brings out the best in him. His willingness to learn and his care not only for Rin, but for others in general, it's revealed more and more as they spend this time together. Plus, their inherent point of connection as single parents struggling to juggle all their responsibilities, it just made it easy to see where this might go, and they had a ton of great chemistry. One of my favorite moments between them, and really one of my favorite moments in the whole manga, is here, where Daikichi is talking with a group of parents. At this point, he makes it clear that he feels like something of an imposter, who's going through the motions of being a parent, but isn't giving up quite enough and still can't manage without time to himself. However, the other parents, including Yukari, get a good laugh out of this. Of course they still need time to themselves. How couldn't they? Sure, they're parents, but that's not all they are. They're still people. This way, Yukari and these others help Daikichi pierce through the certain mystical impression he's had of parents, help him understand that there are points of connection between all of them, and that he's not an imposter just because he makes mistakes or wants time to himself. That's okay. That's normal. We're all just doing the best we can. And after all this, after watching Daikichi change, watching him grow closer to Yukari and other parents, watching him learn and his relationship with Rin develop, we land on the final page of part 1. Finally, Daikichi realizes that his hope has come true. This doesn't feel like a sacrifice. He's happy to be a parent. He wouldn't give this up. And he loves his daughter so much.
Okay, I'm
When
curious.
Usagi Drop suddenly underwent a 10-year time skip, I was shocked. Seemingly out of nowhere, Rin and Koki are in high school. And what had previously been this detail-oriented series, there's a huge gap in Daikichi and Rin's relationship. Meanwhile, somehow, Daikichi and Yukari still aren't together? Huh. That's weird. Now, despite it being a bit out of left field, this isn't a time skip I outright hate. We saw Daikichi's transformation into someone who could take care of Rin as a young girl. That was sweet. So maybe the writer was less interested in the middle years and wanted to jump to how Daikichi would handle raising a teenager. Sure, I guess. Like, the pacing is a bit wonky and I don't like it, but I can forgive that much in a story I've enjoyed this much up until now. So what is the story being told now? First of all, we've had a major change in our perspective character, because before, the story was mostly told through Daikichi's eyes, but now Rin is a big part of that. We are going to see her struggles in high school, apart from Daikichi, and get way more information about her perspective on Daikichi and their relationship. And
This is
honestly,
interesting.
that's pretty cool. This change of pace could really spice things up. Before, we saw what it was like to grow into a parent, but now we can also see someone grow into an adult in general and deal with those struggles. If this is going to be treated in a similar fashion to that parenting stuff, yeah, I'm down for that. Sign me up. All right, so what are Rin's teenage struggles? Well, it's romance time, baby. Yeah, we spend a lot of time on her feelings about Koki, who ended up dating another girl in the time skip, but now they've broken up. However, this girl harassed Rin, and now Rin can't even use her phone normally because she'll constantly get terrible messages from this girl, regardless of how many times she changes her number. Meaning that we now have an external problem for these two to deal with. How will Koki convince Rin that this relationship was just a mistake and that he's done with it? And how will Rin react to him? How will these two grow closer together, deal with the bad ex, and how will Daikichi factor into things? I mean, this could even turn into a sort of dual romance scenario where as Koki and Rin grow closer, so do Daikichi and Yukari. Except there's one small thing. That isn't the story. Not really, anyway. That's not to say that Daikichi isn't a focus or that this relationship doesn't get time. It absolutely does. But the outcome of these events, it falls far out of line with what's been built up. Because slowly, the real subjects of this romantic relationship become clear, coming into focus with each tiny, questionable moment. At first, it's something that can be denied, a simple strange panel or page that makes you go, oh, that was a weird way to show that. Or maybe, I must be reading this wrong. But no, you weren't wrong. Rin has romantic feelings for Daikichi. Now, normally, as soon as this came up, I would have thrown that book across the room, found the nearest playground, and buried my head in the sand, because this? No, not dealing with this. I've seen this trope before. In plenty of stories, older dudes end up with the younger person. Sometimes even those they were basically parents to, or at least those they held positions of authority over. I can think of a bunch of manga off the top of my head, but would these be spoilers? Whatever, it's true, it happens. I don't like it. I had also heard that Usagi Drop had a bad ending. So this, as soon as this popped up, I should have jumped off this train and gone straight on the tracks. But folks, I was huffing the copium because somehow I still hoped that this was wrong. Maybe the romantic subplot was disliked, but would ultimately resolve in a relatively tasteful way. What do I mean by that? well, maybe Rin confesses this to Daikichi, or he learns of it and rejects her because he's, you know, her dad. I can't say that's a conflict I wanted to focus on, but hey, maybe it would serve as a way for Daikichi to solidify his feelings for Rin as a father. And at first, he does push back. He clearly can't handle this idea. He raised this girl, he bathed her and changed her wet bed sheets. He took her in when she had nowhere else to go. He's never looked at her like that. He's never considered it. This sacrifice was worth it because of how much he grew and because he had a daughter. Even if it was never explicitly stated, that was the clear implication, the thing that any reasonable reader would pull from this story. As for her romantic feelings though, well, there are a whole bunch of problems. Like, what's Koki gonna think of this? Like, we spent a ton of time on that, and this is a competent story. There's no way we're just gonna sideline him in that relationship. Is there? Wait a minute, what? He doesn't care that much about her having romantic feelings for Daikichi? He even says that if Rin can't be with him, he would rather she be with Daikichi than someone else. That's... Oh no. Okay, but what about Rin's biological mother? Yeah, they've connected at least a little in the second half, so maybe she'll be the voice of reason. I mean, Rin is actually related to Daikichi, so this doesn't even work anyway, but... Oh, what? Oh, great. So they aren't actually related. We saved that just for now, just so that this could happen and we could be told that it's apparently fine. And the mom's kind of encouraging it? What's going on? Where am I? What story am I reading? Why isn't anyone giving her good advice? Why isn't anyone being responsible? Kid, this is your dad. But you know what? I think I know why no one's pushing back. Because if the characters don't fight it, maybe the reader won't too. So sure, anyone who could push back isn't addressed, or they just decide it's fine, or the likes of Yukari is just kinda written out when she marries someone else out of...
Okay, this makes me really curious about the fucking thing. He fucking describes it fucking well. What the fuck is going on? Okay, I wanna know.
Nowhere, and everyone acts like it's normal, because if they act like it's normal, then maybe I'll go, well, all my friends are doing it, and hop along. But my parents taught me not to follow the other kids off the edge of that metaphorical bridge, and I'm not ready to soggy drop yet, buddy. Or maybe I am, because I still kept reading. I still kept hoping, because surely Papa Daikichi himself would step in and put a stop to this. He has to. He's her dad, right? Right? No, I'm not right. I've never been right. I've been wrong this whole time. When I think about it, there were moments earlier that should have clued me in, weren't there? Like this scene where Rin says that Daikichi isn't a dad to her, he's just Daikichi. At the time, I thought it was just cute, a way of giving Rin some extra personality. And how about when Daikichi said he would hold her when she was a granny if she wanted? Oh no, that wasn't cute. That was horrible. That's disgusting. It was here all along, right in front of my face, and I was too stupid to see it. So yeah, Daikichi decides he'll be with Rin romantically now. She's just gotta wait till she's done high school first, and then they'll... I want to bear a child. Daikichi's. Then, you see, I'll definitely make that child happy, just like me. Right here, this line, this moment, it shows plain as day why this is one of the worst endings I've ever seen. Because, while there are certainly other manga that have moments like this, I've never seen it done in such a horrible way. And why is it so horrible? Because I didn't sign up for this. As much as I'm saying we have recontextualized prior material, come on, how was I supposed to know it would lead to this? This story was so wholesome, so pure, that I couldn't help but let my guard down. I didn't consent to this. But no, this whole series has been a farce, leading to this strange moment where their romantic relationship is supposed to be validated by Daikichi being a good father. Except he isn't anymore, because he's gonna marry his daughter, because that not a sacrifice moment I love so much was a lie. I don't get to love it anymore. Before, it wasn't a sacrifice because he loved his child. Now it wasn't a sacrifice because he gets to make love to his child. Oh man, I think I'm gonna be sick. And what else is there really to say? I feel sick. This is gross. This is wrong. I hate it in the truest sense of the word. I despise what the story represents, and I despise that it strung me along like this just to trick me. There should have been a disclaimer. There should have been a warning. There should have been something. If the mangaka really wanted to make this story, whatever, you do you, but I'm gonna stand in the opposite corner of the room and you gotta tell me what you're up to. But no, they didn't. I read the whole thing. I enjoyed the first half, and throughout the whole second half, I hoped, and I kept hoping, that this somehow wouldn't end the way it seemed it would. But it did. Because this manga betrayed me. No, this manga betrayed us all. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was interesting. Yeah, some stories are like this, and I think that like if you have the talent to actually like create this type of relationships and actually subvert the expectations, I will not. I find it also like kind of strange, this type of like dynamics. But I will tell you, for some artists, it is what's important is not to be people pleasers, but to to make you read something, and to make you discover a story that you won't forget. And apparently, like the way he says it, it was still like it wasn't a fucking etchy manga, or like it was still emotional like the second part, right? So I'm guessing that like it is something that it is something, it is still something that like, you know, the artist succeeded at subverting your the expectation of the viewer. And I think that it is a success within it all. So let me just, so yeah.